Hello, I'm Caleb Max. I'm the president and CEO of the National Artificial Intelligence Association, the nation's largest and fastest growing trade association representing companies building their artificial intelligence. Welcome to our AI on Capitol Hill series, which features bipartisan conversations with members of Congress about policy impacting artificial intelligence. And I'm pleased today to have Congressman Beyer, who is a leading voice in Congress on artificial intelligence, serving as the co-chair of the Congressional AI Caucus and serving on bipartisan House Task Force on Artificial Intelligence. Congressman Beyer represents the 8th District of Virginia and is currently serving in still term. We appreciate your desire to engage on AI policy in Capitol Hill and be such a leader in the space. Can you talk a little bit about your why and what brings you to be so passionate about AI?
Yeah, there's only a couple of things, Caleb, that I think have the potential to change all of humanity. One is fusion energy. If we can just harness the energy of the sun, that's the ultimate renewable. Everything else comes from it. And then artificial intelligence, the possibility of creating computational power, maybe even real intelligence, that's far beyond anything we've ever been able to do before. So the notion that, maybe this investment in AI right now could make an enormous difference for millennia to come.
Do you, I know when you were on the caucus, they did a lot of work to put out a report. Unfortunately, it didn't go too far after that. Can you talk a little bit about your role when you were on the caucus?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I mean, the caucus was 24 people, 12 Democrats, 12 Republicans, 12 men, 12 women. The two leaders, Jay Obernolte, the Republican, Ted Lieu, the Democrat, did a very good job of trying to keep it consensus, but still meaningful. Sometimes consensus can wipe away anything meaningful. And they did it in a friendly way. So we ended up with a 280-page report that no one's read.
Right. I read it.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good report. Yeah. And 80 recommendations, specific legislative recommendations, and Caleb, every one was bipartisan. All 24 people co-sponsored every one of those. So it's, often in Congress, we are rightfully accused of not reacting to what's happening in the real world, but we actually wrote a pretty good blueprint for what the first iteration of light touch AI regulation should be.
I agree. Talk to me a little about, I know you're currently attending George Mason University, my alma mater, and my wife's currently there studying for teaching. And you're pursuing a master's degree in machine learning. Why are you doing that?
I started to do it for fun.
Okay.
I wish I could say I was farsighted and understood this. No, I just was curious, and I'm a math nerd, but I did it about a year and a half before ChatGPT 3 hit. All of a sudden, it looks smart.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm really enjoying it though. And now, probably the best thing it's done for me, not just, as you get older, you want to keep the brain cells moving. So I'm keeping my head young. But more importantly, it's got me appointed to that bipartisan task force.
Oh, really?
I co-chair the AI Caucus. I think largely because I was silly enough to raise my hand and go back and take a bunch of classes.
Right. That's fascinating. Tell me a little bit about your AI Foundational Model Transparency Act. This is a bill that a lot of our members are very interested in. And it aims to set transparency standards for AI models requiring developers to disclose information about training data and capabilities to the FTC. Can you expand on that?
So it's so far, at least, it's our best idea about meaningful, predictable, but light touch regulation. I use Claude a lot. I love it. I'm asking it today, which are the easiest of the 48 peaks over 4,000 feet in New Hampshire I can climb this summer. Yeah, because my wife's giving me a hard time about not climbing ones that are too hard, right?
Yeah.
But it's amazing what it can do and how quickly it can. I also find in my computer science courses, of course, I don't use it to do the coding. That would be wrong and would be academically bad news.
Right.
However, when I don't understand something from the textbook or the lecture, and I go in and say, where does the recursion happen on this? It tells me beautiful things. But on the foundation model, to your question, that's what, for most people, AI is Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, et cetera. And it's very helpful, but we also know there's lots of hallucinations. We know the original problem with AI was biased data sets. If you only put in old white male CEOs, you're only going to get white male CEOs out. So it gives us transparency. Again, light touch transparency. It is not licensing the algorithms. It's not turning over the math. It's just saying, what are you training your data on? And then also is insisting on sort of bottom line safety testing. And the analogy is we don't let the FDA sell drugs on the marketplace until they've been tested again and again. But basically, so far, there's no requirement that the large language models be tested. So those are the two bigger things.
Would that set up a separate regulatory body to do that? Or would this be equipping? I know Jay Obernold, he talks about equipping agencies to do this sort of oversight. Is that kind of where you are?
The legislature specifically doesn't create a body to do that. And that is with Jay and others, we're going back and forth about should there be one central agency in the federal government to do it all, or should defense departments going to have a different need than Interior, than Social Security? Do you let them each? And I don't know that we have an answer to that yet.
Yeah. It's still in work in progress. In March, you sponsored the Guardrails Act to repeal the president's AI executive order ensuring a national policy framework for AI. Senator Brian Schatz from Hawaii introduced a companion bill in the Senate. Can you talk about why it's important for you to ensure that states can enact their own AI safeguard legislation?
Well, first of all, let me say that I completely understand why the president did it. And it's picked up on Jay Obernold, one of the lead Republican AI people in Congress, because we don't want a Tower of Babel. We don't want to have 50 different AI regulations in 50 different states. However, that assumes that the federal government's going to actually have a national standard. Right. And if we just have to look at social media, been around, say, 26 years, and we've passed zero bills. And, this is, as you know well, this is not a place that works fast. So the notion is that we shouldn't be handcuffing state and local governments while we figure out what to do. When we do figure out what to do, when we pass those 80 bills in the bipartisan task force, then a moratorium, I think, would be fine because we've set up a federal framework.
But until that time.
Yeah. And in the meantime, it's fun to see how state and local governments are trying a lot of different things. California had their famous thing, it's HB 53, which a lot of people liked in the industry. I know Virginia tried some stuff this year. I'm not sure what the governor will sign, but it's good to have 50 different states trying to figure out what's the most meaningful way to move forward. Some will go too far. Some will do nothing at all, but hopefully we'll learn from them. And by the way, I'm all in on one federal framework and even more than that. I know we are at the State Department levels above me. We're talking to China. And to India and to Russia and other places. Ultimately, we're going to need something equivalent to Geneva Convention on AI, not so that we don't have really good rules and Russia doesn't have any.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, I lead straight into my question is, what is your reaction to the National AI Legislative Framework that the White House put out last month? Do you think it has legs? Could you get behind some of that?
First of all, I have no real objection to it. My only criticism of it was it's pretty thin. There wasn't very much there. When the President Trump came out with his executive AI, he took down Biden's, which is appropriate, and built his own. And I think one of the things that I value most was he reinstituted the Safety Institute at NIST, National Institute of Standards. He renamed it the KC, but it's still a really important initiative. So I'm just hoping that the president's latest is a skeleton. We can build on it. A Christmas tree, and we can hang the right pieces of legislation off.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a lot of our member companies felt, it was good and didn't disagree with anything, but, knowing being somebody who, working in Congress, all this, it's a long way from a bill. And so.
And to pile on, Caleb, though, one of the things that we're concerned about is that, we, at the extremes, we have the accelerationists, which is no regulation at all, fast as possibly we can, and the doomers, which says the world's all going to end soon. And, the reality is usually someplace in the middle. I want to make sure that we don't end the world, but I also want to make sure that...
That's a good thing.
But that in our race to beat China or our race to achieve all the wonderful things AI will do, that we still are sensible about regulation. And this is especially true for the business community that you represent, Businesses thrive on a predictable regulatory framework, not repressive, not, we don't want to suppress innovation, but we want it to be predictable.
And consistent. So if the Democrats take over the House this fall, what type of agenda should our members anticipate on AI policy next year?
I think just first look to the bipartisan task force report we did in 2024. It'll be refreshed, but there were 80 great suggestions. We passed one already, the Take It Down Act. Ted Cruz is the lead on it. So 79 to go.
Right.
I also think my Foundation Model Transparency Act, we'd love to see that done. The Guardrails Act on the moratorium. And something that we didn't talk about much in the bipartisan task force, but is the thing that's number one on everybody's mind is what if there is major workforce displacement? Dario Amodei from Anthropic has said, 50% of white collar workers in the next 2 to 5 years. Other people are predicting the same kinds of massive dislocation. The only place we've really seen it yet are in coders. Right. And usually young coders, those 2 or 3 years out of college. Story in the paper this morning about how people signing up for coding courses has plummeted.
Right.
Because all of a sudden it's like, well, that's not a path to a job. But we can look to history and say it used to be 99% on the farm. Now there's 1%. Manufacturing, we lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs last year. We're producing more than ever before. It doesn't necessarily affect the GDP, but what will we ask people, and not just 55-year-old coal miners, but now 22-year-old college graduates to do? I can't tell you what the legislation says, but I do think creative members of Congress of all parties need to be thinking really hard about what if there is an unemployment catastrophe, the likes we've never seen, created by this wonderful new thing that generates so much productive GDP without a lot of human manpower.
Right. Yeah, I think the workforce, when I talk to a lot of members, that's top of mind. So you think that'll be a big priority?
For me, it's very much going to be, yeah. And for Republicans too. Right. We've been fortunate so far that the vast majority of our AI conversation and the one bill were completely bipartisan. It'll be really helpful if we don't make this a left versus right thing.
I agree. Last question I have is, you have a lot of experience, of course, with car technology and the car business. And I actually recently went up and spoke to the New Jersey Car Dealers Association, and a lot of them had a lot of questions about, what is the future of auto dealer business in light of AI and regulation and self-driving cars and everything else. So I pose that to you. Where do you think?
Well, let me give you 3 threads. And thread number 1 is when you talk about agentic AI, I think about virtually every car dealership in America, Caleb's got a back office that has somebody doing payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, balance of the money, like 4 people. Agentic AI could wipe all 4 of those out.
Right.
Like in 6 months.
You think so?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know that it will, but it could. Which then
are you using it at your dealers?
Not there yet, but the agentic is new. But you're using it for all kinds of other things. Right. So that the other piece is the car safety. I've not ridden in a Waymo yet, but I'm really interested in that. We lose 39,000 people a year in car accidents. Right. It's roughly the same as when I was a kid. We're traveling many more miles. It's a lot safer, but it's still 40,000 people. And yet most of those are preventable. It's late at night, it's falling asleep, it's alcohol, it's reckless driving. You're in a Waymo, none of that's going to happen. Right. Now, there will be occasional things where a Tesla self-driving or Waymo runs somebody over, and we're all horrified by it. But ultimately, I think we have to be mature enough to drop back and say, you lose 1 and save 10,000. That's probably a big trade-off, a correct trade-off. It's the same with new drugs. You may lose 1 and save 10,000 lives.
So you think the future of automobiles is self-driving?
For an awful lot of people, which gets back to the labor piece. We got an awful lot of taxi drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers who aren't going to have that way to make money again. Yes. We need to be thinking really hard about what they can do to be fulfilled.
Right. You think Waymo will come to the city? I know that's been like a topic.
Yeah, I hear it's coming. I haven't heard any timetable on it. And my wife says there's no way she's getting in one.
Okay, good. And
I'm eager to. So.
Yeah, no, I am too. You mentioned earlier you like use Claude. Is that your favorite AI tool?
It is, yeah. And not just because of Anthropic's Constitution. That was before the Pentagon and the fight with Nixon. Yeah. I just really like also, not to diss anybody, but I found when I was doing basic level bit math, which is 1s and 0s, that ChatGPT was often wrong.
Mm.
And I'd say, that doesn't make any sense. So I go back and say, and they don't always apologize.
Right.
But I like it not being wrong.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Congressman, for joining us.
Thank you, Caleb, very much.
To have you here, and thank you for your leadership on this
Thank you for
issue.
your leadership on this.
Absolutely.
Good luck with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.